teenage angst, maybe at one point, when you're looking for something, some kind of relief, and there was poetry. And then step by step you understand how poetry can widen both your inner landscape and your understanding of the world, and especially not only the understanding of the world, but the word, what it means. Language, I mean, it's the core of the language. So how I came into work with poetry is more that we wanted to introduce a Czech writer, me and a friend, into Swedish that no one really had published in Swedish translations. So then we decided to do it ourselves, and that was our first book, and now 22 years later I'm still doing the same thing. To publish poetry is a big risk, but it's a little loss. And to us, I mean, anyone who can raise 1,000 euros, more or less, can publish a poetry collection, because that's the cost of the printing. But the book doesn't really exist if it's not publicly discussed, or if it's written about, where literary criticism is extremely important as a genre, and unfortunately it's decreasing. I think that's the same all over Europe. So then it's to make then people be aware of the poetry that is published. I mean, that's what we are trying to do. We do publish translated poetry because we don't want the Swedish poetry scene to be insular or isolated. I mean, we need to have influences from other languages, from other aesthetics, and that's why it's important to translate poetry. And what we can do then is also, like platforms like Versopolis and the festivals who are in Versopolis, that brings poets together and show poets to the audience, and then make people aware of the poetry, and they will discuss it afterwards in a way that it's, especially when the literary criticism is disappearing, then those sort of that sort of platform and stages are extremely important. And I think that's our accomplishment as a publisher, is try to make people aware, of course, of the poetry we publish. I mean, to be fair, the poetry community is rather small. It's very nice to go to festival, to meet friends and meet new friends. But it's also, of course, as a publisher, it's important to go to a festival to hear voices and get a taste of, find something that you might think is interesting, and to then go home and read that poet that you have heard in it. The advice to a young poet is always to read as much as possible, read as much poetry as possible. That's the most important advice, I think. And get influence, get ideas, see the language that's in poetry, read as much as possible. That's what will make your writing better. Of course, they have to not give up. I think that's the most important thing, to be stubborn, send your manuscript. Go to open stages, read, write, send more poets, send them to magazines, to newspapers, try to get them published, read and send them again, manuscripts. As I work in Sweden, I go to the Swedish partner Litfest every year and see the Versopolis poets who are invited there and read them, which has also meant that some of the poets who then were translated to Swedish for the Versopolis, we have later done a whole collection by. So Versopolis has been very important to us. And as I said, it's to have that network between festivals in the poetry community is also extremely important, I think, for the organizers to meet and exchange ideas and exchange suggestions of poets.